I specifically worked with manuscripts of Gregorian chant with early musical notation. So that system of notation is called neumes. And since I'm assuming this is a music literate, music educated audience, you'll understand when I say the difficulty when I say that these neumes do not record time signature. They don't record key signature. They don't record specific notes. They don't record duration of each note. All they record is direction of movement of pitch. So does the pitch go up or does the pitch go down? And does it go up, then down, then back up? And other sorts of things like that. So it's a very early musical notation system, which eventually developed into our modern Western staff and lines and all of that, Italian and things like that. But originally it was the one of the ideas is that it was developed as a form of shorthand for monks who might be singing this chant only on the feast day, so once a year, once a calendar year. And so it was created for people who had been doing this for, several decades, but were maybe getting older or needed a reminder that, on this day we sing it with this tune and we use the same words on a different feast day with a different tune. So yeah, so a big part of our challenge was figuring out how to record those musical markings in a way that we could display them on a computer or even, keep a record of them accurately. Because if you've worked with music recording software, Sibelius or something like that, it's all based on modern music notation. Or if you've worked with MIDI files or something like that, it's based on, fairly modern standards of what the pitch center is and even tuning standards. A440 and things like that. So our biggest challenge was just figuring out how to encode these in the first place. So when I started this group with Michael Shunn, who quickly abandoned it after a year or so, as he was focusing more on his music education over his classics education. But despite his abandonment, we persevered, and I, with the help of my team, developed a system for encoding these neumes, which we then went on to apply and present at a couple of international conferences my senior year. So we presented at the International Congress of Medieval Studies in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is the big medievalist convention, at least in the Americas. And we also presented at the Digital Humanities 2018 conference in Mexico City. So I think that work has been some of the most influential for me because of the methods we were using, but also the goals of expanding access to manuscripts and the goals of just trying to open up the ability of people to use all of this stuff we have. So I don't know how many people realize how much we have from the ancient world. It is, it's under 10% of what we know existed based on titles that are mentioned, but we don't have. But it is quite a lot of material. And if you start to include past 500 AD, which is kind of the arbitrary cutoff point for when it becomes the medieval studies and not classics, we have even more data and objects and text to work with. But the problem is with a manuscript, there's only one of them and you don't want to degrade it. So the only way to access it is to be a highly credentialed person and go there in person and physically inspect it. And high quality photographs help alleviate some part of that, but you still have to have a highly trained person looking at it. to be able to do anything useful with it. Not anything useful, but to do a lot of things with it. So this idea of expanding access and making everything openly licensed work and data, and having everything be public was really influential, as well as the model of undergraduate student volunteers. So the main professors I worked with in the Manuscripts Club were Professor Neil Smith of Holy Cross. He, this is his brainchild and his baby, and he does a lot of work and has done a lot of work with the Manuscripts Club to get this, to get everything working. And he is very much a proponent of these kind of goals. And he's had a big influence on how I think about classics and how I work with text. Yeah, so that's a lot. Do you want me to talk about some of my work at Tufts, or should we move on to another topic?
No, actually, this works out perfectly. I think this would be a good transition into asking a little bit about what you've done for your master's. But before that, um, doing all of that work at Holy Cross, at what point did you really consider, oh, I want to pursue a graduate studies in classics? Has it always been in the game, or was there a certain point in your research that made you want to pursue it even more?
Sure. So when I decided I wanted to teach, I knew that my preference would be teaching at the collegiate level. So that is an extremely difficult thing, especially in classics, because the jobs are very scarce. And even though it is incredibly difficult, it is incredibly difficult to get into a PhD program. And once you do, they're still producing way more students with a PhD than there are jobs. So I knew that it would be a long shot to wind up with a tenure track position in classics. But that's what I'm aiming for. And if I don't get there, that's fine. But I really do think I need to pursue that with everything that I have in order to be happy with whatever the result is. So yeah, so my goal kind of all along was to go teach at a college level, and I knew I needed a PhD for that. So part of what I was doing at my time at Holy Cross was trying to do things that would help me practice and help me prepare for and help me pitch myself to a graduate program. So one of the really great things about Holy Cross's Manuscripts, Inscriptions, and Documents Club is that we send people to national and international conferences every year. There's a group or two that's going and presenting their work. And it's that kind of thing where it's all undergraduate led, and Professor Smith is the advisor and sometimes the co-author of these things, but we're not just doing his grunt work. We're helping to shape what the projects are and start projects of our own that we think are interesting. And so that is a lot of what grad school is doing more self-directed research or participating in projects that you have a real voice in guiding. So that was an extremely helpful thing. Also, I did the teacher education program in order to get more experience teaching, because that is something that you're going to be bad at for at least the first 5 years or so that you do it. It's just, you're not going to be good at teaching until you get until you automate enough stuff to be able to do it well. So one of the nice things about the Holy Cross teacher education program is also that it culminates in being officially certified by Massachusetts, getting your initial teaching certificate. So I knew that was kind of my, I would be able to go teach high school for a while. If I, if I didn't get into a program right away, or if I was having, or if I, wasn't finding a job, I will let that go to voicemail. So that was a really nice thing also. So I was kind of trying to set myself up for the next step in the path that I was going on, and that that would be, if anyone is listening is trying to go into academia especially, or just pursue more education. I would say, the stuff you're doing now can definitely help. If you decide that that's what you want to do, halfway through senior year, or even after you graduate, that's also fine and still doable. But the more you can do now to try to get yourself ready for the next step, and also help other people to be able to see you as ready for the next step is a good thing to do.
Now, with that said, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, or what you did do during your master's program?
Sure. So at my master's program, my advisor is, he's still my advisor, even though he's not officially my capital A advisor. Is Gregory Crane, Professor Gregory Crane, who, fun fact, was Professor Neil Smith's roommate for a time when they were both studying classics at Harvard, I believe, in their undergraduate years. So they're still very close in terms of their fields of work. So Professor Crane also works with a lot of digital humanities tools and techniques. So my particular program of digital tools for pre-modern studies is one that he kind of pushed for and leads. So what I've been doing for the past 2 years has been mostly classics courses within the classics department at Tufts, and also using some digital tools in order to try to get at some of the same questions. So my master's thesis, was on kind of trying to delve into more the idea of what genre is in the ancient world, specifically the genre of historiography. So specifically what I was doing was so historiography is I would argue it's the predecessor of what we now call history, but it's not necessarily exactly the same thing. The genres don't, they're not fully intersecting. So basically what I was doing is taking these fairly long historiographical texts, breaking them up into chunks, and then training an algorithm to, a very simple machine learning algorithm to try to sort them into their proper categories. And I had some interesting findings come out of it. I think there's a lot more that could be done there, and that I would like to do at some point, either in my PhD program or later. But yeah, I can get more into the technical details, but I don't have to.
You can if you want. It's all right, but it's up to you.
Sure. I mean, this is something that I spent the whole last year working on, and writing and rewriting and programming and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I guess from the perspective of someone who doesn't have the background in classics or computer science, it can be sometimes a little hard to see, like, why is this the question you're trying to answer? And in a lot of cases it's, because I think it's cool. Same as in a lot of things, and that's one of the nice things about academia, is that you can, to a certain degree, just do what you kind of want. But in this particular case, I think it's really interesting because I find the ideas of how do you make records of the past really interesting and really meaningful. So how do you cast, what's the authorial persona that you aim for? Two of the big Greek historiographers are Thucydides and Herodotus, and they have, for a long time been interpreted, Thucydides have been interpreted as a direct reaction and repudiation of Herodotus's approach. I really like Herodotus more than Thucydides, which is not necessarily puts me at odds, but there are people who disagree with that. But Thucydides' approach is very much, there is one capital T truth, and I'm going to tell you what it is. And I am using my historical critical judgment to filter through my sources and select what is capital T true. Whereas Herodotus is much more inclined to give multiple versions of the same story, or to repeat, to put in his narrative stories that he just heard, and he refrains from commenting on their veracity. And I think that Herodotus' approach is really interesting because a lot of the claims he makes to truth are through what people say about themselves or what other people say about them. So I think there's a lot to think about there with how we approach truth, and kind of, it doesn't matter what actually happened. What matters is what story gets told about it. And I also think it's important that we listen to what the stories that people tell about themselves are, and we listen to what the stories that other people tell about them are. But I think the foregrounding of the stories that people tell about themselves is a great way to learn, and I think it's also very important, just to be good humans and to get along well.
My next question was actually going to be, why should we teach kids the classics? But I feel like a good portion of what you just said there speaks very, kind of answers that already.
Yeah, I mean, people have been reading. So when you ask why should we do classics, there are lots of different ways to answer that. There are lots of ways which I would consider to be problems now. So one of the answers for a long time was that it's the foundation of Western civilization, and that's what we should be learning about because it's the best. And that's not something that I ascribe to. And also, the classics have been used by Western civilization, yes, and Western civilization claims them as its, fountainhead, but they're not, that's not what they were meant to be, right? They weren't intended to be, this will inspire James Joyce, right? In hundreds and thousands of years. This is, instead, these are books and stories and people that people for across time and across the world have been reaching back to and finding meaning in. And I think that is a really important way to think about it. So, works that become classics, or music that becomes classic music, becomes that way because it connects with people. It helps them do something important. It helps them think about some fundamental questions, or it's funny, right? Or it's very sad and cathartic, or it's we always talking about fundamental human questions like it's some kind of big philosophical big head thing, but also like we have stuff from the ancient world that is dick jokes that survived 1,000 years because those are still funny to a lot of people. They're still people. So I don't want to make it sound like it's all these big questions on what is the nature of humanity and how should we live with one another and all the other, Montserrat questions that you think about. Because those things are important, yes, but that's not all that classics is. It can also be funny graffiti or, puns, or the what a lot of people would call the first science fiction story was written in Greek by a man who was probably born and raised and was now Syria. And it's about, going to the moon and the moon people fighting the people who live in the sun and, coming to an island and there's a river of wine and then they get fish out of it and they get drunk by eating wine fish. And it's funny and it's science fiction in a lot of ways that resonate, still. But I think that's one of the big things for me is that it's, these works are still something that I draw a lot of meaning from, but, a lot of other people do too. And so I think they're worth preserving. And I also think the more you learn about them, the more you can, the more you learn about them, the more you can learn about them, right? So, and the more you understand them and the more you can use them to help you think, that's that's what a lot of the stuff that gets preserved is about. It's tools to think with.
Tools to think with. I like that. It's a good thing to tell kids about. Good thing to teach kids about. Very noble too. One of my last questions doesn't have to do with classics or music. It has to do with snow. You mentioned to me in the interviewee form that your first year at Holy Cross featured 20 feet of snow. So what did you do?
It was a lot.
What do you do with that much snow?
Oh man, it was so. This would be the mostly the January of 2015 for people who remember that, and that we had a blizzard about every 3 days in January. And so, they Holy Cross was doing a good job. They have they're used to snow. They know what to do. They have plows and things, and people who go out and salt, all of the very many stairs. But, there was just so much snow that year that, you just have to put it somewhere. So what they wound up doing is in front of the chapel, that big walkway, they kept clearing it, like the whole thing, and they pushed it all into the giant mound of snow, which must have been at least 50 feet high or so on the day when I decided to climb it and have my friend take a picture of me at the top. So I still have that picture, and I can, although this is, mostly an audio format, I don't know how accessible that would be, but it is, 3 times my height. And it was fun. It was a very much I don't want to say trial by fire, but a trial by ice of living in the Northeast, having come from Atlanta, where it does snow, but usually only about once a year, and to the point where it is, more cost efficient to just have everyone pause until the snow melts, rather than actually investing in, plows and de-icing stuff and salt trucks, where it only gets used once a year, and it's easier to just cancel school for a couple days. And yeah, you can't plow half an inch of snow, especially when it melts and refreezes overnight, every night, and turns into black ice. But yeah, so my first winter at Holy Cross was the snowiest winter I've ever experienced here in Massachusetts. But it was a lot of fun. I had my parents went to graduate school at Cornell. That's where they met. So they had all of their old, and I was actually born in Minnesota. We lived there for 2 years before moving to Atlanta. So they had lots of coats they hadn't worn in, 16 years that they were giving me. So I had lots of, I had all the coats and blankets. we had to shelter in place for a couple days, and we picked up sack lunches, and my roommate and I went outside when we weren't supposed to, but our RA saw us as he was ducking out the door to get a snowball to throw at someone inside. He was like, "Don't get caught. Have fun." So yeah, that was a fun winter. My first winter here. We got to go sledding on the hill behind Figgy. That was one of my graduation presents for my brother, was a sled, like a plastic, a plastic circular sled. So I got to go sledding. That was fun until it was time to walk back up the hill through the snow.
That's awesome. You lived in Atlanta. You had your undergrad and master's in Massachusetts. You said you were born in Minnesota. You'll be going to Stanford in California for your PhD, and you have been, and you also have been to Rome and Greece.
Yes, yeah, I've been to Rome twice, and I've been to Greece once. I was supposed to go back this summer, but obviously that didn't happen.
Where are we looking forward to going next?
So the program I was supposed to do this summer has actually been they just postponed the whole thing a year. So I will be going there next summer, which I am very much looking forward to. It'll be a 6-week intensive thing all over Greece, and it will be led by one of my professors from Tufts, and one of my other friends from Tufts is also going. So that'll be nice to kind of reconnect with them, and also be able to see more of Greece. Yeah, pictures don't. I know it's a huge privilege to be able to go over there and be able to participate in these programs where I can see these things, but there really is something that pictures cannot capture about standing there and seeing the mountains, especially being able to stand in the ruins of ancient Sparta and see mountains on every side. And that's when you go, oh, that's why they never built walls around their city. Because, you're not getting an army over that mountain very quickly.
Well, that's great. Best of luck to you, Allyn. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. One very last question is something I like to do with all of our guests. In the same fashion, on senior day at football games at Holy Cross, we add an additional subtitle to the football announcement when the marching band is coming on. So far we have Downbeat with Alumni. That was from Carrie. Catch You on Zoom from Andrea. Divest from Fossil Fuels from Rebecca. Konnichiwa Bonsai from Kevin. And For the Love of God, James, give us an A
from Emily.
Yeah. So what would you like to add as a subtitle to Holy Cross Band's podcast?
So this is the question I didn't actually think about ahead of time. I thought about all the other ones, but the one that you were sure to ask, I did not think about.
It's okay if you need some time. If you do know what you want to say.
I think I'll go with Choo Choo Rah Rah.
Choo Choo Rah Rah.
Choo Choo Rah Rah.
Short, simple, sweet, a reference everyone understands. I love it. So Allyn, thank you for being on Holy Cross Band's Downbeat with Alumni, Catch You on Zoom, Divest from Fossil Fuels, Konnichiwa Bonsai, For the Love of God, James, Give Us an A, Choo Choo Rah Rah podcast. Thank you very much, Allyn.
Thank you.
Yep. And for anyone listening, down in the description or wherever, be sure to follow Holy Cross Bands from any of our social media outlets. But thank you for listening.